So I have a problem. When I was younger, I'd always watch princess movies where the girls would balance books on their head and keep a good posture and balance, but I could never do it for as long as they could. However, I never had the patience to practice balancing books on my head regularly. Could this be the answer to my problem? To find out, I performed this experiment. My question is, can I balance the language of literature, a fairly large book, on my head for 5 minutes if I practice every Friday? Now I observe. The book, The Language of Literature, weighs 5.5 pounds. The book is 8 by 10.5 inches, so it is evenly weighted, which will be perfect for balancing on my head. My hypothesis is, if I balance The Language of Literature book on my head every Friday, then I will be able to balance it on my head for 5 consecutive minutes. So I will conduct an experiment. Every Friday, I will balance The Language of Literature book on my head. I will measure the length of the book from where it stops touching my head to the edge of the book, to be sure that the center of the book is on the center of my head. I will have another person begin timing me at the same time that I remove my hands from the book. I will stand as still as I can and wait until the book completely falls from the top of my head to stop the clock. I will record the time that it took. Week to week, I will go through the quantitative and qualitative data. For qualitative data, I will record facts that are true and have affected the experiment. There will also be quantitative data, which shows how long I balanced the book and how much longer or shorter I held it from last time. Week 1. 6.15 seconds. Holding a book on my head was harder than anticipated. There are no distractions and the house was quiet. Week 2, 7.21 seconds. There were no distractions and the house was quiet. I improved by 1.06 seconds. Week 3, 3.01 seconds. This week my dog ran into my leg. I held it for 4.2 seconds less than last week. Week 4, 6.39 seconds. This week there were no distractions. I improved by 3.38 seconds from last week, yet I was still lower than my highest score. Week 5, 1 minute, 9.76 seconds. There was background noise caused by the microwave. I went 1 minute and 3.37 seconds longer than week 4. Week 6, 36.21 seconds. There were no distractions. I went down 33.55 seconds. Week 7, 1 minute, 7.9 seconds. No distractions. I improved by 31.69 seconds from last week. Week 8, 10.14 seconds. My brothers were home and were making noise. I went down 57.76 seconds. Week 9, 1 minute and 10.97 seconds. The television was making noise. I improved by 1 minute and 0.83 seconds. 10, 29.05 seconds. There were no distractions. 41.92 seconds decrease. Week 11, 4.18 seconds. My parents were talking and distracted me. I decreased by 24.87 seconds. Week 12, 19.51 seconds, no distractions. I improved by 15.33 seconds. Week 13, 36.53 seconds, no distractions. I improved by 17.02 seconds. Last week, 48.5 seconds. There were no distractions. I improved by 11.98 seconds. Analyzing the data. My experiment was 14 weeks long. The longest amount of time that I held it was 1 minute and 10.97 seconds, which is 3 minutes and 49.03 seconds less than my hypothesis. My mean number was roughly 29.68 seconds. Modifying the data. If I were to modify this experiment, I would use a smaller book. Part of the difficulty of this experiment was the weight was hard to manage. I would also change how often I did it. I think that only doing it once per week stopped me from improving my score. I would repeat this experiment daily. Lastly, I would also try walking and sitting to see if that made a difference. I think that balancing on my head could be easier if I was focusing on moving my legs, or balancing on my feet would make it harder than sitting down. In conclusion, I reject my hypothesis that while standing, I would be able to balance the Language of Literature book on my head for 5 or more minutes. My standing still and balancing skills are just too poor for this. Lastly, practicing once a week does not allow me to advance my skills. This is a graph of my data.